Welcome to the ETF Market Insights, your regular webinar series that focuses on the evolving world of ETF investing. Each Friday, a new panel of thought leaders aims to provide investment education and insights with the goal of helping you become an informed investor. Make sure to visit www.youtube.com/ETF Market Insights to watch previous episodes, and remember to hit subscribe so you receive a notification when we post new content. Thank you for joining us today. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the ETF Market Insights webinar. This is Kevin Prince from BMO Exchange Traded Funds. Thank you again for joining us as each week we dive into different aspects of the market and provide you insights and education. Today's conversation is on the future of online investing, and we have some key partners from BMO InvestorLine joining us here today. I'll introduce them a little later on. Now, if you've been in these sessions in the past, well, one thing I'll highlight is disclaimers. And we will not provide specific recommendations today, nor will we provide specific advice. What we do want to do is provide you education and insights in the marketplace. And because we have some partners joining us from BMO InvestorLine, let me say the exact same thing on their behalf. Not specific advice, nor specific recommendations to provide today, but really, again, education and insights. Now, we are working to evolve and have a channel on YouTube, ETF Market Insights. If you're on YouTube right now, please hit subscribe. For those of you out there, if you're listening to this live, of course, maybe take a look afterwards and go on YouTube, search ETF Market Insights and hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much, because you're not only going to get this content, but as we add more content going forward, you'll be advised of that as it gets presented out there. Thank you. And let's give you a little bit of insight of what happened in the marketplace. Of course, the calendar has just changed over, and so we can take a look at the flows for the calendar year. Interesting to see as we look back over last calendar year, 2021, that we had over $53 billion in ETF flows. Again, that's a new annual record. And if you look at the key players in the overall marketplace, BlackRock, BMO, Vanguard tend to be the dominant players in the Canadian ETF industry, but certainly a number of other players out there too, as you can see from the pie chart here presented. The other thing I want to highlight here is the flows in the industry and give you some key trends we're seeing from those actual flows, because this is representing the years of flows. And the key trends we're seeing, of course, dominant broad markets for flows being the top two out there, being the TSX Cap Composite or the S&P 500. Also seeing access to new asset classes like Bitcoin, still in the top area out there, things like fixed income. And that's really giving you that efficient access to the marketplace. More recently, we're also seeing the area of asset allocation ETFs, those one-ticket solutions coming in too. And then a little further down the list, good to see that ESG has become a key aspect to invest in the marketplace, or something people look for. So that's a nice new trend we're seeing in the marketplace. And then continuing from previous years, trends for individual parts of the market, like sectors, in this case, banks. So that's give you a quick overview of what you're seeing from the flows for 2021, looking forward to 2022, and hopefully we see another record year of flows again in the ETF industry. And now let's flip in to the core content. I'm going to bring in my two guests, Andrea Cassiato, who is the head of digital investing at BMO InvestorLine. She really takes care of the day-to-day investing at BMO InvestorLine, as well as Dave McGann, who is the head of strategy at BMO InvestorLine. Both of them are very excellent speakers, going to talk about where the future of online investing is going. Now, let me hand it off to Andrea to get started.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kevin, for having us here. Thanks to all of you who've made the time to join us. I'm really excited to speak to you today about what we've been seeing in the direct investing space and what we see coming. This first chart shows us the new online brokerage accounts opened by quarter for the past few years. And as you can see, there was a huge spike in demand and adoption of digital investing in 2020 and 2021. For those of you who attended the webinar that InvestorLine was at last June, we were still at the peak of that increase. So you can see that huge bar right in the middle there. And although account openings have normalized somewhat in the past couple of quarters, new accounts are still far higher than historical. So just to put that in some perspective, if you look at the beginning of 2018, we saw a lot of volatility from the cannabis craze and a new high bar for account growth in online investing. But that new high bar was absolutely decimated over the last couple of years. Our view is that this overall increase in online investing interest reflects the macro societal trends in terms of just how much of our lives we spend online and in digital channels. But it was really accelerated by the pandemic. The pandemic was kind of a catalyst for adoption of digital. And the volume itself here is just part of the story. It's also insightful to look at who is opening these accounts, because that's also been evolving. In InvestorLine, we've noted that new and younger investors under 35 are really driving growth, and I'll return to that a little bit later. Our existing investors have also been opening up new accounts and taking advantage of margin, options, et cetera. And our active trader segment has also been evolving. And that brings me to trading volumes, which I'll talk to you on the next slide. So this is a very similar story to new accounts. This shows direct investing trade volumes for the industry over the past number of years. And you see the same dramatic increase in trading volume, which again, we now see normalizing a bit. And so that new growth in accounts that we saw before naturally leads to that higher trading activity. But there's a couple of other factors that have driven trading volume. The first is volatility in the market. So that's a big factor that drives investors to be more active. And we really saw that at the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020, and then again last January with meme stocks. Younger clients also have a longer investment horizon and want to seize opportunities in the market and build their portfolios. And so seeing an increase in younger clients is translating into more activity. So let's move on to the next slide and look at some other trends that we're seeing. There's three trends that I wanted to highlight that we've been seeing in InvestorLine, and I'll give you a sense of how we're responding to those trends. So we'll start on the far left. Similar to the industry, we saw client growth in InvestorLine last year, up 20% year over year. As I mentioned, InvestorLine's new client growth is being driven by next gen, so the under 35 segment, which makes up 40% of new clients. As we see more clients who are new to investing, or in some cases they're transitioning from a traditional advisory relationship, we've taken a leadership role in education to truly empower Canadians to invest smarter. Some of the things we've been doing is really building our investment learning center with new resources. We have a comprehensive, on-demand, 3-part investing series that's hosted by our finance educator partner, Preet Banerjee. There's a new Smarter Investing podcast series that's hosted by BMO economists, and it delivers information in an audio format, and it's really growing in popularity. And we've also done hundreds of blog posts to inspire and empower investors at all stages to make smarter investing decisions. The growth that we're seeing in this space is really fantastic, and we see ourselves playing a key role in supporting new investors while also creating engaging content for our more sophisticated investors. And another way we're meeting the needs of newer and younger investors is evolving our mobile capabilities. We'll have a brand new mobile app for Advice Direct and a refreshed mobile app for Self-Directed coming soon this year. So I'll head to the far right side of the slide now. And another trend we're seeing is the increase in demand for digital advice. And our Advice Direct product, that demand is up 35% year over year. So we've really particularly seen that take up on that hybrid advice platform. Investor Economics is forecasting continued growth in the digital advice space over the next 5 years. And so hybrid advice is great because for those new and younger investors, they can take their first steps into investing and use the personalized advice offered to make smarter investing decisions. And then more seasoned investors can leverage the alerts from the platform to help them take action when they need it instead of being glued to their screens all day. And so we did 2 things in the space this year to meet this evolving demand. The first is expanding access to digital advice by lowering the asset threshold for entry into Advice Direct. And then we also expanded our Advice Direct Premium offer, which is a dedicated relationship manager for Advice Direct clients who invest more than $500,000 in assets. So finally, I'll just pop to the middle of the slide. The growth in the online investing industry and the changes in the demographics of the online investors has been driving changes in the products that we're seeing our clients invest in. So some of the trends we're seeing are related to the overall interest rate environment, so increases to cash balances, relatively smaller increases in fixed income, but we have seen a huge increase in ETF asset inflows on our platform. It's up 50% year over year. So I'll spend some time digging into that on the next slide. So this is an industry view of products held at online brokerages. And you can see that the growth of ETFs as a percentage of assets has been double digits in the last 5 years, and it's outpacing the growth of any other product in the online brokerage space, both on a 3-month and year-over-year basis. Online investors seem to really like ETFs. Again, younger clients are driving some of the growth. Often they have smaller balances. This is an easy way to start to build a diversified portfolio. And it's great for newer online investors overall. It doesn't require the investors to be active traders, so it's a really easy way to start your self-directed investment journey. So again, Investor Line's differentiating to meet this demand, and Dave will talk more to this in a bit. But there's a few things, bigger things that we've done to support our ETF trading. So no commission fees on over 80 ETFs on our platform, some key platform features to complement that new pricing, and our ETF Hub, which brings all of our ETF tools together under one tab. This is our ETF screener, comparing ETFs, searching by predefined themes. So I feel that Investor Line's really positioned well to empower clients as that demand for ETFs continues to increase. I'll turn it back over to Kevin to talk a bit more about some of the other macro trends.
Andrea, thanks very much for that. Really appreciate that. Andrea Caftero, we're going to have you back a little later on for questions at the end. Thank you again. Now, what we're also seeing from an audience perspective here is, let me turn to some of the industry reports here from an OSC perspective. So the OSC did a study this last year in regards towards online investing. Let me highlight a couple of key trends they're seeing. Really building off what Andrea is saying, certainly seeing opening of net new accounts out there. There still is a good, strong audience out there. People have accounts over 5 years, but really tilting to some of the newer people and seeing that accelerating of account opening that Andrea highlighted. In addition, look at the demographic profile. You know, 60-40 is kind of the mix when it comes to gender out there. But interesting enough, we're seeing a little bit more of a tilt towards younger people, but still a strong demographic and retirees within inside the online channel. One nice thing to see, which builds upon some of the flows we've seen in the ETF industry, is ESG information has become a key aspect from a consideration out there for online investing. And what I like to see here too is the satisfaction level. 69% of individuals who deal at direct investing are satisfied with the experience as an investor. Great to see across the board. And then as we tilt towards a conversation with a little bit of ETFs, because Andrea mentioned this, certainly seen the growth in the ETFs within inside the platforms. We're going to bring Dave on in a little bit here to talk about some of the things that have been going on with Inside Investor and some of the industry aspects too of the ETFs. But why are we seeing ETFs become an aspect of investing through online investing? Well, what investors have been saying through a study we saw in 2019 is that they want that flexibility investing, but they want to invest for the long term at the same time, which is really what that ETF does, is it gives you, investing, but allows you to have that flexibility, liquidity at any one time. Plus, of course, it brings in diversification instead of having a single stock exposure. That may be a complement too if you still want to have single stock exposures. What are we seeing and how ETFs can be used out there? Well, different investors are using ETFs in multiple different ways, whether it be the newer asset allocation ETFs you're certainly hearing about in the marketplace, like the VCon or ZBAL out there. Also seeing things like core equity ETFs, the broad markets. Fixed income still a dominant thing that people are looking at. You saw it in the flows where they're using those to get that efficient access across the board. We talked about ESG already. Factor ETFs, that's really kind of more of a development where people are saying, I want a certain type of exposure, low volatility, or maybe I want to have a dividend kind of investing out there. Enhanced income retains an aspect too, where they look at the cover calls, and thematic or sector investing gives you that more targeted exposure. Certainly seeing those in ETFs as ways people are utilizing ETFs within inside their direct channel, of course. Now, Dave, let me bring you in here, because one of the things that we've seen as a key trend and key change was really the democratization of free trading out there, and really going to the smallest trade size out there. Dave, talk to us about some of the innovation that Investor Line's brought into this space, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kevin. And, I know we have a couple of slides as well where we'll zoom in on some of the great tools and features we've recently added to the platform. But to begin with, I think we're going to talk a bit about our suite of commission-free ETFs. And so before I dive in and talk about how we really came about the various different offerings within this, I want to take a step back and talk about the type of investor this is really geared towards. And it really is that self-directed investor that values the role ETFs can play in their investment portfolio. And what we also wanted to do, Kevin, is we wanted to make sure that we created options for just about every type of investor, whether you're new to investing, relatively inexperienced, very experienced. So that was kind of what was core in terms of some of the thinking as far as how we approach this. To kick things off, we wanted to keep the suite of commission-free ETFs simple but smart. And you already touched on some of this earlier in your presentation, Kevin. But we know when we take a step back that the Canadian ETF space is really dominated by three players: BMO, BlackRock, and Vanguard. And so when you think about the types of ETF products that are in demand, and when there's liquidity, and where there's just a broad cross-section of options, we really felt like constructing our list and focusing on the top three manufacturers made a lot of sense. And so that was our starting point. And then coming back to, again, trying to ensure that there's options for just about every type of investor, we really landed on 5 asset classes. So you have, some of your standard asset classes like equities. And so within that, we have sub classes, including options for Canadian equities, US equities, international, as well as emerging markets. We also wanted to enable even more choice by incorporating a few different types of indexing methodologies. And so we do have some cap-weighted options. And we were able to introduce some strategic beta as well. And so you'll find in that equity category that there's some great options for things like low volatility, dividend focused, etc. And then lastly, from an equity standpoint, we wanted to ensure that there was some currency exposure options as well. And so very, very robust offering just in the equity context. We also have a fixed income category, and within that we have mixed options, corporate, government, as well as high yield. We have a multi-asset class category. And so this is, as you highlighted earlier, Kevin, an emerging category where we're seeing a lot more demand, but this really enables investors to really create an instant portfolio with a single investment. And so where possible, we've offered 5 distinct portfolio risk profiles, ranging from conservative all the way to pure equity. And then the last 2 categories we introduced, Kevin, we're really excited about, because this is where, and you touched on this again a little bit earlier, this is where we continue to see more and more demand. And so we've integrated thematic and ESG offerings into this as well. And so again, taking into consideration those 3 manufacturers, where applicable, we've plugged in up to 5 different ETFs per category, spanning things in ESG, as well as thematic, to really allow investors to have access to these emerging asset classes and categories. So we're really excited about the suite of commission-free ETFs that we've been able to build. We believe it's extremely broad, comprehensive offering, but at the same time simple and easy for investors to be able to dive into. And again, we do believe it really meets the objective of having offerings for just about every type of investor.
Thanks for that, Dave. Now, nice to have the full offering. Let's talk a little bit about how the investors can use that as kind of part of their portfolio construction and the advancements that kind of free trading helps them do that, if you can, please.
Absolutely, Kevin. And so there's obviously a lot of different types of strategies that you can be thinking about as far as how ETFs can play a role in your investment portfolio. And we've heard Andrew talk about this a little bit earlier in the presentation. ETFs can be an incredible vehicle for investors in particular that are just getting started or setting up or transitioning their portfolio. And so, examples are like in the multi-asset class category I talked about before, we have ZBAL, BMO Balanced ETF, which is a multi-asset class ETF. And so that's a great way where if you're just transitioning into investor line, and you're looking to get a well-diversified portfolio to get you up and running, those types of options are incredible. Or even if you're just looking to get broad exposure to the Canadian index, an offering like ZCN, so the BMO S&P TSX Capped Composite Index, again, a great way with an just an initial investment to get broad exposure across the Canadian market. And so ETFs, great vehicle, great tool for those newer to investing or transitioning, cash into investing portfolio, fantastic way to get up and started. Rebalancing is another area, Kevin, where ETFs can play a tremendous role in just keeping the tactic of rebalancing simple. And so to use an example here, let's say the markets have gone on a bit of a run, and you want to make sure that you're selling off some of your equities and rebalancing to build up a little bit more on the fixed income side. Using a ticker like ZAG, the BMO Aggregate Bond Index, can be a great way to build on your fixed income part of your portfolio and rebalance your portfolio, and keep the exercise extremely simple. Risk management and tactical adjustments. Again, ETFs make it very easy to make tactical changes to your portfolio. Touched on this a little bit earlier when I was describing some of our offerings, but we've got a ticker like ZLI, so the BMO Low Volatility International Equity ETF. And so this is a great way where if you're feeling a little bit uneasy about how the market's performing, you still want to have some exposure to equities, but maybe you want to try and reduce volatility. Well, there's ETFs that have those types of tactics built right in. So it just makes it very simple to use ETFs as a strategic tool and a way to manage your portfolio and make those types of tactical adjustments as well. And so overall, I mean, there's a ton of different ways to think about how ETFs can strategically add value to your portfolio. We've just touched on a few here. And that's part of what we also thought about when we thought about our list of commission-free ETFs, is ensuring that the offering is robust enough to also allow for a lot of these strategic use cases as well.
David, I think the free trading is a key aspect, absolutely, and you're absolutely right when you talk about the way that people can now utilize their portfolio to really enhance their portfolio construction and take away that barrier of, like, for example, rebalancing, or making those tactical adjustments. But let's talk about maybe some of the other things we're seeing as advancements coming out of Investor Line, kind of more the broader ecosystem changes you're bringing in. Talk to us about that if you can, please.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. And so, look, when we originally launched this suite of commission-free ETFs, it wasn't about just building a pricing play for our investors to be able to take advantage of more attractive pricing for ETFs. We really wanted to empower investors to be able to use ETFs strategically as part of their portfolios. And so, to complement some of the things that we've done from a pricing perspective, we're excited with our ETF Hub that we've recently launched. And so, for those of you, on the webinar that are Investor Line clients, this is part of our, refreshed, brand new website. You can click on the research tab, and there's a dedicated tab specific to ETFs. And this is just a bit of a snapshot of what you can expect when you come to this page. And so, one of the things that's not actually showcased on the snapshot, but we also have a bit of an education or videos section as well. We already have 4 videos loaded into this section. So we've got videos spanning from topics like, just help me understand what is an ETF. We also have some ETF basics insights all plugged into a video. We have a video dedicated to asset allocation ETFs and explaining what they are and how they work. And we also have a video on ETF themes and megatrends. And so this is just a starting point, Kevin, to some of the educational content that we really want to layer into the research part of our website. And we're excited. We're going to be rolling in many more videos over time to really empower, again, investors to be able to make smart decisions about investing. So that's just a bit about education and videos. But we've also included some fantastic tools in here. And so what you can see on the screen is we've got a dedicated section that's specific to an ETF screener. And what's fantastic about these screening capabilities is it really allows you to create and save customized searches. And so if you were to click into the screener and dive right in, you'd be able to literally create a screener to filter across different geographical regions or countries. You'd be able to filter across things like the return spectrum. So if you want to zoom in on some of the more higher performing ETFs over the past 1 or 3 years, you can filter according to that. You can filter based on like ratings, so Morningstar ratings. So you can select or choose to say, like, show me all of the 5-star Morningstar rating ETFs and be able to get that instantly. You can also zoom in and filter specific to categories. So you can zoom in on specific sectors or industries, as well as things like pricing, MER as well. And so it's just a tremendous screener to allow you to start to get in and explore and play. And what's nice about it, again, is it's customizable and you can save your searches. One of the other things that we've added as well, Kevin, is we know that while ETFs are gaining in popularity, you know, there's varying degrees of understanding of what's out there. And of course, you know, there's lots of different offerings. And so we've got the section at the bottom around themes. And there's a few examples here where you can see, you know, Canadian large cap equity, enhanced income equities, Morningstar 5-star ETFs. In total, we have about 8 categories. And so what's really neat about this is if you're coming in thinking about a particular theme, maybe it's technology, we've got a list curated already where you can take a look at, in some cases, hundreds of ETFs that are instantly there and available for you to scan through and evaluate. And so we're excited to be able to introduce this kind of thematic way of exploring different ETF options. And then now I'll dive to that top right box where we have the ETF Compare. And so what's kind of neat about that is, you know, again, using that same example on the technology, if that list has, let's say, a few hundred ETFs in it, we've got this compare tool that allows you to compare up to 4 different ETFs. And so you can get a side-by-side view and look at things like, what's the Morningstar rating across all 4 of these different ETFs? You know, what are the total assets? What's the MER? What are the return profiles? And you can see that even visually from a performance standpoint. So a great tool, once you start to zoom in on a theme you're interested in, you've maybe, you know, you've narrowed your list down to 3 or 4 that you might be interested in, a great way to go into that double and triple click to help you decide which ETF is perfect for your portfolio. So we're super excited about all these tools and features, Kevin. And I'd say that we're just starting. We're very excited to continue to build and invest in this part of our website, in particular with the research of ETFs, to really empower all of our investors to be able to make smart decisions about how ETFs can add value in their portfolio.
I really like the fact that it's not only about the cost aspect, it's about the whole ecosystem, and you're providing the tools to help people do it themselves and really get some good insights around ETFs to make an informed decision. So hats off for that. Hey, Dave, let's say people want to find out a little bit more information about some of the tools you offer, some services you offer in BMO InvestorLine. Can you give us a little shout out for maybe Jay there, if you can, please?
I'd love to. Jay is my esteemed colleague. He leads our national sales team. A fantastic person to connect with, even if you just want to learn about, you know, anything in this space, anything in the online investing space. Jay really knows his stuff, and he'd be happy to help anyone with any of your questions. So there's some contact information below for Jay. Feel free to reach out to him by email or phone, and he'd be very happy to talk to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave McGann and Andrea Casiato. I really appreciate you both joining us today. I know we've got a few more questions to go through from the audience here. So if you can join me, maybe Dave, let's kick off with one for you. An InvestorLine client, certainly liking the ETF Commission free, but where do you see it evolving over time is kind of the question coming in.
Yeah, it's a great question, and so thank you for that. As you know, as I think our entire audience has seen through the presentation, you know, the ETF space and the demand for using ETF as an investment vehicle just continues to grow, and so we're committed to try and empower Canadians investors to be able to make smart decisions for investing, but also for their ETF investing. And so that ETF Hub that we walked you through, we're committed to continue to build and help that evolve and transform and integrate even more tools and features over time to simplify the research part of exploring ETFs and making your journey easier in terms of deciding ultimately on what ETFs you want to go with. In addition to that, we're going to continue to review our commission-free ETF list, and we want to make sure that it's relevant and that we've included categories, asset classes, if you will, that continue to be in demand. We already did a pretty robust walkthrough on what we have today, but we're exploring, for example, today, whether or not we introduce a category specific to sectors and industries, and offering up a number of options across those same three manufacturers in the spirit of equity, rather sector and industry focused. And so those are the types of additional things we're going to look to layer in. But this is an area where we know there's great demand from investors, and we want to continue to make that journey of ETF investing simple by offering smart tools to allow that to happen for all of our clients. So that's what we can expect over the near term. More on the education hub, as well as perhaps that list expanding to include even more categories as well.
Well, thanks for that. And it's good to see that it's going to continue to evolve going forward. Thanks for some of the questioning. A couple more questions coming in from the audience here. What ETFs are available which offer broad exposure but less financials inside there? Well, interesting. If you're looking for ETFs that kind of have a little less financials but still the broad exposure, you may want to look at some of the factor-based or the smart beta ETFs. Utilize the tools that are out there, InvestLine tools, or even on the BMOETFs.com website, and you can see some of the holdings within inside the ETFs. And when you look at some of those factor-based or smart beta ETFs, you can actually see there is a dispersion or a difference between the broad market exposure, traditional broad market exposure to financial services, and maybe these factor-based ETFs. So for example, things to look at are kind of the low volatility exposures that are out there. They tend to have a little less financial services inside them. In addition, kind of quality-based methodologies also tend to have a little less financial services. But again, take a look at the respective ETF companies' websites and look at the holdings underneath there, or utilize the tools out there. And you can, by looking at those factor-based or smart beta ETFs, tilt away a little bit from financial services. Thanks for the question. Another key question, and I think it's going to wrap us out today, given the time frame. Where can I find a list of BMO ETFs? And thank you for that. Sector ETFs, building upon Dave's conversation, to use for sector rotation. Really, what I guess the individual is looking for is what performs best with inflation. Well, you know what? Thank you for the question, because that led us into our theme for next week. And our theme for next week is to dive into inflation investing. So I'm going to save all that conversation for next week, and I hope you can join us then at Friday, January 21st, 1 p.m. again, as we continue to run the education information through our ETF Market Insights. That brings us out to close today. Let me thank both Andrea Cassiato and Dave McGann for joining us today. And I want to finish out by saying any investments or trading strategy should always be evaluated relative to each individual's circumstances. Individuals should seek the advice of professionals as appropriate regarding any particular investment. Thank you for joining us again today. Hope to see you next week. Have a good week ahead. Cheers.
Thank you for watching the Market Insights webinar series. To stream any previous episode of the Market Insights webinar series, please visit www.youtube.com/ETF Market Insights. Remember to hit subscribe so you know when we post new content. Also, we invite you to visit our accompanying website for ETF tools, education, and much more at www.etfmarketinsights.com. Once again, thank you for watching. The session provided is for information purposes only. Any reference to a particular company or product is for illustrative purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy or sell. Particular investments and/or trading strategies should be evaluated relative to the individual's investment objectives, and professional advice should be obtained with respect to any circumstance.